So in recent times, folks, there have been numerous reports of violent crimes committed against citizens, and crimes such as sexual abuse usually gives rise to victim blaming. But what is victim blaming really? Joining us now to answer the question is Programs Manager of the Victim Services Division in the Ministry of Justice, Dionne-Dawn. Morning, Ms. Binns. Welcome to Smile Jamaica.
Morning.
Good morning, Neville. Good morning, Delia. It's indeed my pleasure to be with you this morning. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure to have you. Hope all is well with you. Before I find out about the victim blaming or what it is, what is the role of the Victim Services Division overall?
Well, the Victim Services Division in the Ministry of Justice is responsible for providing emotional and technical counseling support for victims of crime. These are persons who have been traumatized as a result of crime and are experiencing the devastating effects of crime. And so what we try to do is to facilitate access to justice for them through the different interventions that we provide.
And this is any kind of crime we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so this morning we're focusing on victim blaming. Dionne-Dawn, define that for me. What is victim blaming?
So victim blaming data is a devaluing act that occurs when victims of crime or tragedy are made to feel that they are responsible in some way for the crime being meted out against them. Some expressions of victim blaming are outright, whilst others are quite subtle. So in instances such as asking the victim why they did not do more to prevent themselves from being victimized, or comparing them to others that may have escaped, or refusing to show empathy that is consistent with the extent of the trauma that they face. Those are some instances in which victim blaming will occur.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead, Deirdre.
I was going to ask, in terms of your division, how do you assist victims who are often blamed? I mean, depending on what it is, and in the case of gender-based violence, sometimes the whole social media.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do you assist them? Do you offer social support?
Exactly, Delia. So we provide counseling, we provide emotional support. We have different special intervention programs that assist these victims. So a lot of times these persons experience what we call secondary victimization. So having already gone through the experience that they have had, what happens then is because they are blamed or because they're made to feel that they're responsible for what has happened, they experience this. And so collectively, the intervention processes that we do will aid them in getting to the healing that we want them to get to.
Because you hear sometimes, unfortunately, that a young lady or maybe a big woman is raped, and then you hear it's because of how she did dress. And they kind of turn it back on the young lady or the big person to say if she never dressed so it wouldn't happen. That's victim blaming, which is kind of stupid, isn't it?
Exactly, Neville. And so the reality of the situation is that any one of us can become a victim of crime at any time.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we see victim blaming mostly in cases of sexual assault or domestic violence cases, as was mentioned by Delia earlier. But we see where persons will ask questions, so why she did have to dress so, or she didn't expect that to happen if she looked like that, that kind of thing. And then it causes the victim, in turn, to begin blaming themselves, which is a very toxic cycle that then begins to occur.
So take me through the help that you would give someone like that. And do you actually tell them, say, maybe you shouldn't dress like that? But take me through how does it work? So if it happens, unfortunately, it does happen, what do you say to them?
So we don't tell them that they should not have dressed like that, first of all. But we carry them through a process of cognitive behavioral therapy, which helps them to understand that, listen, you could not have prevented what had happened to you, right? It could have happened to anyone, and so you cannot blame yourself. Now, in terms of going through this process of therapy, we try to help them to remove those thoughts that are not true and to replace them with thoughts that are more consistent with what has happened.
The danger of victim blaming, Dionne-Dawn, is that once it happens, the victims tend to be silenced. And so even persons who may not yet be victims, when they become victims, they don't want to say anything because, Lord, I don't want nobody come down upon me and blame me that it was me. Or the crime happens and I don't want to say anything because I don't want to be blamed. From your experience, what are some of the worst effects that you've seen from victim blaming in terms of seeking justice for a victim?
Sure. Well, Delia, one of the things that we see quite often is increased suffering for the victim. Right? As I mentioned earlier, they're already dealing with a traumatic event. So now to be made to feel that, listen, I'm at fault for why this thing has happened, it helps to further erode their mental stability, right? On a societal level, it means then that fewer crimes will get reported. Also, it means that fewer perpetrators will get prosecuted, because it exasperates the blame and the guilt and those feelings of embarrassment that they face. And so if something should happen, they're going to be very reluctant to go and report it.
Yeah. It says your division is aiming to raise awareness about this. Apart from what you're doing now, how else do you get people to understand that this is rubbish, don't do it, and it don't make any sense?
Well, so in addition to public education, which this is one such event, we try to have smaller interactions. So for example, you'll find even parents tend to victim blame. It's because the pitney rude. We tell the pitney still enough to do this and they went ahead and did this, so it therefore is their fault why it happened. So parental support, parental education, we try to instill in them that, listen, these are not things that can be easily avoided.
Tough job.
Yeah.
Tough job, but as they say, somebody has to do it. Thank you so much for speaking with us this morning. And I pray that all will be well with you. Stay safe and God bless you.
All right.
Thank you.
That's Dionne-Dawn Binns, Programs Manager of the Victim Services Division at the Ministry of Justice.
Up next, the details on the Thursday in Black campaign that Delia spoke about. Soon come.